Before we begin, it's important to understand what's at the center of this debate. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch argues that the UK government's response to the escalating Iran crisis lacked clarity and urgency, while critics believe decisions involving military action and international law require careful deliberation. As you watch, consider not only the political arguments being made, but also the broader questions about leadership, national security, and Britain's role alongside its closest allies.
Last night, after more than 24 hours of obfuscation, Keir Starmer finally agreed to support the US and Israel's actions in Iran. Canada and Australia had already backed our allies on Saturday, but until last night, Keir Starmer still couldn't tell the British people where our country stood, or even whether the UK would allow the use of our air bases. It took Iranian missiles hitting allies in the Middle East and threatening tens of thousands of British nationals across the Gulf before the Prime Minister finally climbed off the fence. Iran's regime has funded international terrorism, attacked British nationals, brutally repressed its own citizens, and continues to try to develop a nuclear weapon. And yet, even this morning, the Foreign Secretary still can't say if the Labour government supports action against Iran. People in Britain will be wondering why our country's response has been so weak. The official explanation for the hesitancy is international law, but this is a fig leaf. The real explanation is not legal, it is political. Across the UK, there are groups whose political loyalties when it comes to conflicts in the Middle East do not align with British national interest. These are people who Labour see as their voters because without them, they cannot stay in power. This isn't international law or principle. It's pure partisan political calculation from a Labour Party that has surrendered its right to govern our country, and it is the reality of decades of failed integration policy. We need to act in the British national interest. That is what politicians are elected to do. We are elected to make sure that we preserve the security and safety of citizens in this country. Iran is a threat to Britain, and we should do everything within our power to make sure that it is no longer a threat. The US was carrying out actions in its national interest. Our government couldn't say whether or not it agreed or disagreed with what was going on. And let's be clear, international law is a fig leaf. It is not a coincidence that Canada and Australia, other allies led by left-wing governments, were able to say what they believed, that they agreed with the actions, and our Prime Minister was wringing his hands. That shows that this has got nothing to do with international law and everything to do with votes and where the Labour Party...
At this point, the discussion shifts from criticism of government messaging to a broader argument about national security and political decision-making. The speaker suggests that electoral politics, not legal concerns, explains the government's hesitation, but that is a political interpretation rather than an established fact. Supporters of the government have argued that international law, diplomatic coordination, and the potential consequences of military escalation all require careful consideration before taking a public position. What do you think carries more weight during an international crisis? Swift political leadership or measured diplomatic caution? Share your perspective in the comments.
He thinks its votes comes from. The lesson in Iraq was make sure you have the evidence first. In Iran, it is very, very clear what is going on. This was a regime that launched attacks on Israel on October 7th. We saw it very clearly with our own eyes, video evidence. This is a regime that was supporting the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, and has been attacking all sorts of ships in seas, things that our economy depend on, like shipping lanes. Our economy is very, very dependent on oil. All of these things are in our national interest. Iran in 2026 is not Iraq in 2003. And it is quite clear that many of the people who are talking about learning lessons aren't actually being specific about what those lessons are. The lessons are to make sure that we are ready, we are able, and that there is evidence. I believe that all of those things were in place for this. We need to make sure that we do not put our country in danger. Yes, of course. I do not want to see a situation where we are sending British troops, people's sons and daughters, to war when we're not clear what is going on. With Iran, it is very, very clear what is going on. And we can't just bury our heads in the sand like ostriches and hope that if we just do nothing, the problem will go away. I do not want to see an Iran that has nukes, because if they do have nukes, we will be nuked. That is very, very clear. That is what we need to explain to many people who may not understand the specifics of this situation or the details. We need to be honest about that. Keir Starmer does not know what he believes. I know what I believe, and I'm able to say so. I think it depends. I don't think we needed a vote on this. And quite frankly, given that this is the most left-wing parliament with a lot of extremely silly people sitting there, I do actually worry about allowing people like Zara Sultana and so on to be voting on serious issues of national security. There is a place for MPs to vote. There is a place for that. But sometimes when things are moving quickly, we can't spend time with lots of people giving speeches written by ChatGPT about stuff that they don't know about. Let's focus on this. Let's focus on what matters.
This exchange highlights how foreign policy debates often become tests of political leadership as much as national security strategy. While one side argues that Britain should respond more decisively alongside its allies, others emphasize the importance of legal obligations, diplomacy, and careful decision-making before supporting military action. Ultimately, viewers can weigh the evidence and decide which argument they find more convincing. If you found this balanced political analysis valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fact-based coverage of UK politics, global affairs, and the debates shaping today's headlines. We'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.